It's day 100. It's also August 14th, 2019, and we are in Rangeley, Colorado. You ever wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what am I doing? And more importantly, why? Yeah, me too. Hi, my name's Craig, and this is my story. A story about life out there. For visuals while listening, search Life Out There on your favorite social media platform or use the links in the podcast description. "30 miles or so due east of Vernal, we passed through a town called Dinosaur and into Colorado. But before I dig into the next stop on our adventure, just a quick reminder and apologies that I've not done a very good job of reminding you that there is a video version of the podcast available. If you're listening on Spotify, you may already be watching the video version. If not, the episodes are published on our YouTube channel as well. I take tons of photos on our adventure, so if visuals are helpful while you're listening, all the links are in the show notes below. And with that, onward. Where were we? Oh yeah, Dinosaur, Colorado. Situated smack dab in the middle of the Dinosaur National Monument, the name Dinosaur, Colorado, well, that's pretty obvious. What might not be so obvious? The millions of years of geological shifts and changes recorded in the rock formations that we look at today. From some 200 million years ago, when the area was made up of low plains full of slow-moving rivers, the very rivers that dinosaurs lived and died along as geological shifts transformed huge parts of Colorado from these low-lying plains to being submerged under inland seas, where they would remain for millions of years until further shifts, the combination of erosion and volcanic activity, would eventually settle on what we look at today. Geological activity in the area has been documented as recently as 5,000 years ago. The first known inhabitants in the area were the Fremont and Ute Native Americans. These hardy folks would live and prosper in the harsh climates and rugged terrain for centuries. Documentation of their presence can be seen throughout the area in the form of forts, lookouts, dwellings carved into the rocks, as well as pictographs and petroglyphs carved into the rock walls. European and American settlers would arrive in the area in the 1800s as exploration in the country pushed west. Thanks to the Homestead Act of 1862, Art and Fanny Baxter would settle the area as Baxter Springs, establishing and operating a successful ranching and farming operation. Proving the hardy nature of these early settlers, they'd find creative ways to survive the harsh climate. The area is known for its hot and dry summers, and then swinging wildly into insanely cold winters with deep snow events being common. Many pioneers would live in dugouts carved into the hillside just big enough to stand in, utilizing the earth itself as shelter. These dugouts would serve as temporary shelters while they dry farmed their land, built cabins, and established the other necessities of an early American settlement. You can still find evidence of these dugouts in the area today. When the town was platted to accommodate the oil boom of the 1940s, it was renamed Artesia due to its valuable water supply. In 1966, the town would be renamed again, this time Dinosaur, to capitalize on the town's proximity to the Dinosaur National Monument. Today, just some 200 folks call this place home. As far as businesses go, I saw 2 gas stations, a Colorado Visitor Center, an ice cream and hamburger stand, a liquor store, and 2 marijuana dispensaries. I was a little puzzled at first. 2 cannabis stores in a town of 200? But I quickly remembered that just 30 miles behind us, there were 10,000 or so folks in Vernal that might often wish cannabis was legal in Utah, like it is in Colorado. And that liquor store? It very likely has a few regulars from Utah as well. I couldn't just drive through this one. I had to pull over, get out, walk around, and ponder how different life would be here. I mean, literally, no grocery store, no urgent care unit, no local diner. There's no courthouse or police station. The nearest of any of these things is almost 20 miles away. And that gets you to a town of 2,000. Go in the other direction, and 30 miles later, you'll get back to Vernal with around 10,000. If you need more than that, well, pack a bag, because it's hours in any direction. And in many ways, so very awesome, I thought. The odds are, I wouldn't have a dorkweed neighbor. I'd probably know what a garden was, and I might even spend a little more time doing that than I do binging on Netflix or playing a game on my phone. The truth is, I wanted to spend more time looking and even asking around, but it was dang near 100 degrees outside, and I needed to crawl back into the AC and trek that 20 miles east to a place called Rangeley, Colorado. Here's the coolest thing about Rangeley, in my opinion. It's not a place you find by accident. You have to be looking for it. You have to be going there. Rangeley, it's quintessential Colorado. It's quintessential America. It's a place born in the shadow of the industrial age and the oil boom of the 1930s and 40s. And that, in and of itself, makes it no different than hundreds of other towns across America at the time. But in most cases, those other hundreds of towns across America at the time, they were on the way to or on the way from someplace else. Here in Rangeley, not the case. 50 miles to the east puts you back in Vernal. Trek 50 miles in the opposite direction, you'll find Meeker, Colorado, with about the same population as Rangeley. From Meeker, you could drive another 48 miles or so and find Craig, Colorado, population 9,500. The fact is, from Rangeley, if you need serious shopping or medical services, you'll drive some 90 miles over Douglas Pass to Grand Junction, Colorado, population 65,000. So the fact is, if you live in Rangeley, it's because you want to, and it's because you know how to. So why is it here? How did it come to be? Why do a couple thousand people call it home today? And why am I here? Well, I'm here because of connection, because of memories. I'll skip over a bunch of details in the middle, but suffice it to say that life happens. Sometimes people get married. They have kids. And then sometimes people get divorced. Sometimes people go home. And sometimes a 15-year-old kid might find himself hopping a plane in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and finding himself getting off that plane 1,000 miles away in a place called Grand Junction. And then, said kid spends a couple hours in a car traversing a terrain called Douglas Pass to land in another place called Rangeley. That 15-year-old kid, in this case, was me. I spent 2 weeks in the wilds of Colorado's western slopes seeing things I'd not even seen in the movies. And then I left. And that was 40 years ago. So I thought maybe I should go back. Have a look. So I did, and here I am. Why is Rangeley here? How did it come to be? Well, let's start at the beginning. It's here because it sits on top of one of the oldest and most productive oil fields in the history of the United States. Yup, an area of the country that once sat below a shallow sea for millions of years has produced nearly 1 billion barrels of oil and contributed significantly to the country's growth during an era in which the U.S. would find itself and become the global leader that we all, as Americans, identify with today. The first oilmen would arrive in the area in 1901, but the real bump in the history of the town would happen when Chevron arrived in 1931 and established the Raven A1 discovery well in 1933. This well would end up producing 230 barrels a day. World War II, as it did in every element of American industry, would kick things into high gear. By 1949, there were 478 wells across the Rangeley field, and by 1956, the peak rate of the area production was 82,000 barrels per day. The Rangeley-Weber Sand Unit, as it would become known, by 1998 had recovered more than 815 million barrels of oil, making it the largest oil field in the Rocky Mountain region and ranked in the top 5 producing fields in the country. The fact is, every list I looked at, it's the second largest producing field behind only a field in Alaska. All this would happen in a remote corner of Colorado's western slope. The town would be incorporated as Rangeley in 1944, named after the hometown of one of its early arrivals in the area, from Rangeley, Maine. No matter where I am these days, each time I fill up at a gas station, I think about places just like Rangeley, about the generations of folks that made their home in a place that the rest of America knows little to nothing about. And yet these folks, they made it possible for that rest of America to pull up to a gas station and fill up. And oil? That was Rangeley's yesterday. What about Rangeley today? And why do some 2,200 folks call it home? In just a few short months, I've passed through a ghost town or two. Examples of Americana that came and went because of where the work was, and wasn't. Places like Hardman, Oregon, where farmers were forced to pick up and leave one day because they had to go where the work was, leaving their legacy behind. The folks in Rangeley, as oil production in the area has declined, they didn't leave. As the world we live in shuts down oil production in the U.S. and looks towards a brighter and cleaner future in the world of sustainable energy, and as we leave fossil fuels behind, closing yet another chapter in the short history of humans and their impact on the planet, folks in Rangeley, they look to the future. What might have been overshadowed a bit by the oil boom of a bygone era was everything else this western slope has to offer. The rest of the country might have lost sight of it, but not Rangeley. They haven't lost sight of anything. And in fact, they're laser focused on the future. And the future's bright. First, imagine this. In a town of 2,200 in the middle of America, Rangeley's home to a state-of-the-art medical facility that opened in 2013. In my travels to date, I've learned a couple of things. First, if medical services leave a small community, and second, if the education system leaves the community as well, then the odds are pretty good. That community's done. Relegated to the past. We now look back and call those towns ghost towns. The exceptions being, of course, what we call bedroom communities or suburbs. Many towns have survived in today's world because they are within commuting distance of a larger metro area. You know, like Drain, Oregon. But we've established that that's not the case in Rangeley. Even without easy access to larger metro areas, Rangeley's held on to both local medical services as well as educational institutions. And not just held on, but pressed forward into the future. Rangeley's Medical Center offers state-of-the-art medical services, and just as importantly, it's a lifeline transport place for folks that might need emergency life flight services from Rangeley into the greater metro areas hundreds of miles away in Grand Junction or even Denver, keeping the community connected to the medical services vital to any small town. And education? They've not lost sight of the importance of education in their community either. Rangeley's elementary and high school system remains vibrant and connected to the community. In addition, CNCC, Colorado's Northwestern Community College, calls Rangeley home. This facility was established in the area in 1962 and to this date educates some 1,000 students each year from around the country, all of which choose Rangeley in search of their future. Whether their future is aeronautics, dental hygiene, park ranger programs, law enforcement, or even liberal arts. And spending your downtime as a college student wandering around these rugged mountains exploring billions of years of evolution, what's wrong with that? Nothing. And let's not forget that Rangeley's also home to 2 museums, a classic auto collection and an outdoor museum. They have a golf course, a municipal airport, and the state's only designated rock crawling park. All right here in Rangeley. For me, this stop would be about remembering and exploring in the mountains around Rangeley. The mountains these couple of thousand locals call the Western Slope. And home. I could definitely get used to exploring around here. The Western Slope, which incorporates everything west of the Continental Divide in the state of Colorado and sprawls out over most of its northwest region. The county roads, the trails throughout the White River Valley and into the mesas of northwestern Colorado's high desert, are seemingly endless. And the fun is exponential when the roads and trails disappear and the real exploring begins. It quickly becomes easy to understand the popularity of these side-by-side vehicles everyone seems to run around town in here. Sometimes referred to as UTVs, utility terrain vehicles, or OHVs, off-highway vehicles, these things are incredibly agile and competent, and more importantly, addictive. UTVs have evolved into what they are today over several generations and continue to grow in popularity, even when ATVs and motorcycles are declining in sales. Most days, we just hop in and head up or down river depending on the mood and explore. The best part is having a local providing a guided tour detailing the area's history, what used to be, and what's in store, and even pointing out the area's petroglyphs and very well-hidden historical sites. This was all a very new experience for me. The exhilaration is beyond addictive, beyond explanation. Hopping in one of these open-aired little four-wheel drive machines, driving a few blocks up to the road to fill up with gas and supplies for the day, and then strapping into a 5-point harness, crank the soundbar, and drive off into the mountains. There are over 8.3 million acres of BLM or public access lands in the state of Colorado, and more than 27 million acres of mineral estate. And most of this is concentrated in the western part of the state. Rangeley comes with over 560 acres of its own. I'd never experienced a situation in which you could leave your driveway, go a few blocks in any direction, pick a dirt road, and head off into adventure. Within minutes, you're surrounded by the rugged terrain of the western slope with no sign of civilization. Occasionally you'll happen upon an oil rig or a natural gas compressor station, and the Desirado coal mine can be found 9 miles or so due east of Rangeley. Coal production in the mine has played its part in Rangeley's past as well. A favorite was the day we packed up and headed upriver for the day. By day's end, we'd been swarmed and chased off a ridge by flying ants, roasted hot dogs over an open fire, climbed in and out of countless rock-bordered ravines, got caught in a rain squall and the mud it brought with us, and racked up nearly 100 miles that day. At day's end, a barbecue capped off the perfect day. Driving into or out of Rangeley, you'll pass a billboard that reads, "Rangeley, way outside ordinary." In a few hours traversing the western slope, you'll agree that there's nothing ordinary about this rugged, wide-open, and hypnotic landscape, showing different shades of personality around every corner, and with every shift in elevation, the scenery shifts yet again, making it ultra-clear that there is indeed ordinary, and then there's Rangeley. And just when you think it can't get any better, you're introduced to night rides. It's hard to imagine that a trek across a western slope, zigging in and out of creek beds, ravines, wrangling the trails around Kinney Reservoir, could get any more exhilarating. But it turns out that when Mother Nature shuts the lights off around here, she's also opened a back door into a world you couldn't possibly imagine. You just have to do it. The headlights of the side-by-side cutting through the darkness, pulling back the curtains just a few yards at a time and then immediately closing them behind you, enveloping you in darkness, but at the very same time, putting a spotlight on exactly what you should be looking at just a few yards in front of you. It's as if the spotlight hits the star of the show, center stage, at exactly the right time, in perfect harmony with the side-by-side going from 50 or 60 miles an hour, sliding to a stop, watching the dust settle in the spotlight, and then launching, yet again, into the darkness in search of the next spotlight moment. And the spotlight moments are endless. The hum of the side-by-side blending with the music blasting from the soundbar, the taste of dust on your face, mixing with the tears forming in your eyes from the sheer speed, the cool night air blending with and reminding you of the vastness of what's around you. And then you fold in your imagination. You begin wondering, what's watching the show from the other side? A completely different perspective from mine inside the machine. What are the bears, cougars, mountain lions, wild horses, deer, elk, antelope, jackrabbits, black widows, brown recluse spiders, rattlesnakes? The list is endless. They're all speeding past in the darkness. But in the darkness, you see none of it. In that darkness, they see you. It's the epitome of a roller coaster ride, I think. I read once that the largest and most extreme roller coaster ride in the United States is called King Ka in New Jersey. And somehow I'm imagining this King Ka on steroids and in the dark. And then there were the memories. Revisiting the spot where a 15-year-old had spent an afternoon dragging one catfish after another out of the White River, running up the hill with each one and proudly handing it off to Grandma C for lunch. Or that spot where an afternoon of go-karting would end in a brawl with a mailbox post. I lost. Just asked my broken toe. And you know how a smell, a song, or seeing something can sometimes transport you instantly back in time to a different place? That's exactly what happened one hot afternoon when I found myself standing in a driveway staring at a 1981 Chevy Silverado. The paint was faded to near metal, rust in all the usual places, seats all ripped up, the remnants of a chrome roll bar complete with mounted fog lights. It had a for sale sign in the windshield. And all of a sudden, it was October 1979. My cousin drove his brand new Chevy Silverado pickup from Gilroy, California to North Branch, Minnesota to celebrate our grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. It was the truck that would become legend in the collector's market all these 38-plus years later, affectionately referred to as a square body. But in 1979, in the eyes of this 15-year-old, that truck was the coolest gunmetal gray thing I had ever laid eyes on. That 350 V8 announcing its arrival, and even more dramatically its departure, in the way that Chevys did back then. The aftermarket lift kit, oversized tires, custom hurricane wheels, chrome roll bar, and KC spotlights made it clear, in no uncertain terms, that this truck would go wherever you pointed it. And the top-of-the-line Silverado trim package meant that it came with all the bells and whistles. You could even roll up the windows and lock the doors with the touch of a button. I learned to drive stick shift in that truck. My cousin, with a little help from Grandpa, and at the risk of a perfectly good clutch, patiently showed me the way around the dance floor known as a clutch and a gearbox. Nope, slow down, he would say. She'll wait for you. Listen to the engine. You'll feel it as you let off the gas and start to push the clutch. You'll feel the rhythm of it all. It'll all come together. And it did. I was shifting my way along the sod farms and cornfields of North Branch, Minnesota in no time. And what's more, my reward for being such a quick learner was that I would get to drive that truck to the anniversary celebration in Minneapolis on the big night. We all have those memories that stick with us, the ones that are etched into our brain and can be recalled in vivid detail at any moment, like it was last night. That night is one of those memories for me. I can still feel how excited I was wearing my brand new suit and tie, cowboy boots all polished up, big silver belt buckle with that gold C in the middle of it, and a dab of Grandpa's Old Spice. I stepped up into the driver's seat of that truck. This 15-year-old with his brand spanking new shiny learner's permit had not had a lot of time behind the wheel. So that gold Chevy emblem grinning back at me from the center of the steering wheel made me feel pretty darn grown up. Important, even. I turned the key and fired up 175 horses, and at the end of the gravel driveway, crossed the railroad tracks and turned right onto Rural Route 3. And it would be a glorious 54-mile drive to Minneapolis on a chilly October night. Fast forward, as time always seems to do, and I find myself staring at this diamond in the rough sitting neglected in a driveway in Rangeley, Colorado, picturing in my mind that with some imagination, a bunch of elbow grease, and even more TLC, this little Rangeley, Colorado treasure could add a few more memories to the many it likely already has within it. But this time, at the hands of this eager, young-at-heart old guy that somehow turns back into a 15-year-old each time he slides in behind the wheel, and that gold Chevy emblem grins back at him. As of this post, I've ordered new tires, a 4-inch lift kit, new suspension, scheduled to have the mechanic have a run through it, and I am so looking forward to an episode in which my newfound little adventure buddy and I are exploring the western slope together. Leaving Rangeley this go-around would be the first time I knew that I was leaving a place, and I would no doubt return time and time again. You can spend a lifetime exploring this place and experiencing it in different ways. Generations have. My fascination with the discovery of true wilderness grew here. It became an addiction, in a very good way. I spent my last afternoon in Rangeley sitting on the tailgate of that little pickup on a bluff overlooking the town. I'm not sure exactly how long Dougie and I sat there absorbing it all. The hot August air had begun to pick up the evening chill as the sun sank behind the Blue Mountain Range. All I know for sure is that the six-pack we left with was half gone, and it was time well spent. We're headed back west tomorrow for some work on the rig. We'll take a different way out than we came in. I have to see more of what's out there. I'm not spending much time looking at maps these days. Just pick a direction and go. Where will we pull off and sleep tomorrow night? I don't know. But wherever it is, I wonder what we'll learn there. Turns out, this thing called life comes with a lot of rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Because you can. No, seriously. You can.